Welcome back, everyone. I hope that you are enjoying the sessions of today. And get ready because now we are here for a treat. We have now one of the totem gurus of the industry. He has been everything in the entertainment and video games industry for the past 30 years. He is Shawn Layden. He has been working for Sony for over 30 years, as you all know, but maybe nobody knows that he was having dinner with Ivan just 3 months ago. Is that right?
No, I don't know if people should know that, but yeah, I mean, I was commenting with Elena that I met Shawn the last time, like 3 months ago, before all this situation started.
Yeah, and you had the opportunity to convince him to join us.
Well, he was super convinced because it's.
Okay,
I know
he's an old friend.
He has expressed that publicly, that he loves our little show as much, almost as much as we love him. In that dinner that we had as friends 3 months ago, the world was completely different, right?
Of course.
And his life was, I guess, very different 1 year ago when he decided to leave Sony. So what we were basically saying is that I was trying to convince him in a way that, Shawn, you need to come back to Gamelab. You need to let us know more about your vision of this industry. Now with the complexity of being the leader of such a great company as Sony. I mean, because last time he was in Gamelab Barcelona, it was in 2018, I remember. He was interviewed, he was on a fireside chat with a PlayStation lead architect, Mark Cerny. That was amazing. They were all over the career of Shawn at Sony, but there were many things that we would like to ask Sony. I mean, we like to ask Shawn
yeah.
that we couldn't do
because he was
so openly that time.
Representing Sony.
Yeah. So we think, we thought at some point that it was time for bringing Shawn back, and he kindly accepted to be with us today. So it's an enormous privilege to have him here.
Yeah, it's such an honor. But we have another dear friend of Gamelab interviewing him. He's just here on my left. He's Dean Takahashi.
Of course.
Also a member of the advisory board of Gamelab. Mm-hmm. So how is going to be the conversation? Do you know anything about?
Well, I mean, if it's between Shawn Layden and Dean Takahashi, is for sure a top conversation. I mean, Dean is one of the brightest journalists that I've ever read or met. And I love how Dean Takahashi covers every topic, because he gets to go deep into the topic, yeah. But he's very thoughtful about what he questions and how he projects the story outside through VentureBeat stories. So they are going to be talking about Shawn's career, of course, Shawn's vision of the industry, and more than that, about what's coming next, what the future after COVID holds for the industry, and for all of us.
For all of us, indeed. So let's not wait anymore. Let's say hello to Shawn and to Dean, and let's get to it.
Let's go.
Hello.
Hey, Ivan.
How you guys doing?
Very.
I wish I were in Barcelona.
Barcelona is looking great. We miss you in Barcelona, but don't worry, we'll get you back next year. This is just temporary, okay? I mean, this is just because of the circumstances, but we love to have you here anyway virtually. And we are so looking forward to listening to you and to know what you have in your mind at this point in your career, at this life-changing point in your career, Shawn. Dean, can you help us go through these things that Shawn has in his mind?
Yes, Ivan, congratulations on getting this done. As the organizer of the GameSpeed conference, I can empathize with what has to happen right now as far as how to organize events this way. Yeah, it's my honor to speak with Shawn about what's been happening in the game industry. Shawn, I have you say a bit more about your career and some of the things you witnessed at Sony later. But it's such a difficult time now. I wonder if you find it hard to think about games when there's so many other things going on in the world.
Well, hey, Yvonne, and hi, Dean, and thanks again for allowing us to come back here to virtual Gamelab and speak to fans all over the world on what's happening now in the world of gaming. Thanks for that, Dean. I think gaming is now proving to be more important than ever. Certainly in large parts of the world where folks are in either a shelter in place or a stay-at-home order or quarantine or a lockdown, whatever phrase is of the moment. I think we're finding that gaming is becoming a lifeline for a lot of folks to get through these times, trapped at home. It's interesting that even the WHO, who I think last year put out some directive around the dangers of gaming, is even encouraging gaming as a good way to keep occupied during these times of quarantine. So talk about coming a full 180 on a subject. Gaming is more important. I've been playing a lot of games myself. Many of them I didn't get a time to get around to when I was working in the business. I think this is an important time for gaming. Number one. Number two, I think gaming needs to come out of this as an industry, probably in a different way.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking about narrative gaming, and I just happened to have finished playing The Last of Us Part 2, and wow, what an experience!
What game's that?
Have you heard of this title?
And extremely proud and happy for the team.
Yeah, it's so strange that I played it during a pandemic, and it's a game about a pandemic and the aftermath. Who would have thought that we would be here? I guess
life imitates art.
But yeah, you have a very strong point of view about games like this. I guess can you talk about that some? This point of view you have about narrative gaming.
I think the huge narrative experience through gaming is really what the whole gaming industry has progressed to. I mean, this is how it's evolved over time. I was lucky enough to be involved with the console business right from the first generation of PlayStation, and moving through PS1, 2, 3, 4, and now on the precipice of PS5. I think we've seen the greatest amount of advance and growth in gaming in the narrative space. I mean, right? Because PS1, it was virtually, the whole idea about PlayStation 1 was to bring the arcade into the home. You can have Ridge Racer at home. You can have Tekken at home. 3D gaming experiences in your home. And that's what it's built around, and that's what started its initial success. And that's where a lot of the great developers came from, out of the arcade tradition, whether it be Taito or Namco or Sega or Midway in the American arcade companies. But as the technology advanced and as people's ambitions grew and as folks who are getting into gaming wanted more than just the 3-minute coin drop experience in the home, narrative gaming began to evolve in that area. And I think now with the next generation of gaming coming from the big hitters, Microsoft and Sony, we're seeing another advance across that spine. Recently, Sony had their PS5 reveal event, and I was really heartened to see in that show how many great stories are coming to PS5. How it's not just about free to play or subscription based or that kind of massively multiplayer type of gaming, but more giving something to the single player fans, if you will, the people who come to gaming because I want to immerse myself in a story and have be a part of someone's vision of the future, not have to build it all myself, but be in there, experience it, learn their point of view. I think Last of Us 2 is the ultimate example in the current generation of hardware
Amazing.
about where that
Amazing game
goes. Yeah, I think we'll see more of that.
Do you feel like it's sort of like the highest form of the art, that it's the thing that makes games better than other media?
I don't really accept the competitive aspect of that question, that this is better than that for these reasons. I do think that gaming has come into its own as a full-blown artistic endeavor, alongside music, alongside movies, alongside television, and books, the great precursor for all of us. I think that with the new technologies and the new people coming into the industry, we're seeing the continued evolution of what can be expressed through gaming. What kind of feelings can we make you feel? We can make you scream and yell and be horrified. Those are the easy ones to get. But if we can make you contemplative and sad, that's really hitting the full gamut of emotional response through a gaming experience.
Yeah. So for you personally, while you're at Sony, was there a point where you started seeing this more, and that this was sort of the kind of thing you wanted to make happen more, the narrative games?
Yeah, I think my first real close-up experience with that, I mean, we had some in Japan, but they always ended up kind of in the RPG aisle, whether it's Arc the Lad or Shu's Legend of Dragoon, which everyone keeps asking for again. I think that's where we saw the stories developing for the Final Fantasy VII series, and how that made you feel. My personal experience with how that, shall we say, jumped the species barrier, was when we were working in London, and the London studio came up with The Getaway. The Getaway, which was trying to be a London gangster action movie in a game setting. And when I say tries to be, I think it achieved that 100%. But we were getting real scriptwriters. We were getting real actors to do the mocap and then get performance capture. All of these things are kind of leading edge at the time in the early 2000s, when the team Bondi at the London studio put together The Getaway. And that's when we really began to see, this is the potential of bringing a story, a full narrative story, into a gaming experience, and having the player be part of that cast. And they never look back.
And so there's been this progression, I guess, this cultural shift too, since the PlayStation 2, I guess, where people are taking this kind of entertainment, I guess, more seriously, right? It's sort of like a change in culture happening at the same time the art form is advancing, I guess.
Yeah, and it's not just a change in culture; it's the size of the model, right? The demographic through PlayStation 2 began to broaden. We saw a greater diversity of players coming into indie gaming, not alone just more women coming into gaming, but a broader age demographic. The average age of gamers started inching up into the mid-20s and late 20s during the PlayStation 2 era. So the more people you get in, and what did PlayStation 2 end up selling in the end? Like 150 million units or something crazy like that. It became an actual phenomenon. It took gaming out of the basement, if you will, and brought more people into it. So with a wider audience to appeal to and a wider spectrum of interests to align against, I think gaming really blew itself out and said, okay, we're not just about racing and fighting and RPGs. That whole action adventure genre really started to explode, and I think now it's probably the biggest genre out there, alongside first-person shooters, of course.
Yeah, and the games are also huge now. I mean, they're. I think you have some concerns about how much these games are costing and how risky they are to undertake as well.
Yeah, we look at. I still remember when games would cost $1 million to make. And those days are long gone. So the cost of creating games have increased. Some studies will show that it has gone up 2x every time a console generation advances. The problem with that model is that it's just not sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
Major AAA games in the current generation go from anywhere from 80 to 150 million or more dollars to build, and that's before marketing. So it's a huge upfront cost extended over time. It takes 3, 4, 5 years to build a game. You're not getting any return on that investment. You're just continuing to pay into it and looking for the big payoff at the end. So I don't think in the next generation you can take those numbers and multiply it by 2 and think that that's going to continue to grow along that spline. So I think the industry as a whole needs to sit back and take a look and go, all right, what are we building? What's the audience expectation? What is the best way to get our story across? Say what we need to say, and I think that's going to cause the industry to look at the kind of games we're doing and where do we go from there and what are we putting into them. I think it's hard for every adventure game to say they're going to shoot for the 50 to 60 hour gameplay milestone, because that's going to be so much more expensive to achieve. And in the end, you may close some interesting creators and their stories out of the market if that's some sort of threshold they have to meet. Well, if you don't have 50 hours of gameplay, you don't have a game. We really need to reevaluate that shibboleth, if you will.
Yeah, it feels like gamers demand more and they want more, but they may not realize like where we are and how much it takes to deliver these things, right? I think, I guess my own observations about some of the big games like Red Dead Redemption 2 was 7 years in the making. It had as many as 2,000 people working on it. I saw God of War was at least 5 years and hundreds of people as well at Sony Santa Monica. You have Naughty Dog working on The Last of Us Part 2 for well beyond 5 years as well, with hundreds of people. These are gigantic teams. I don't know. I guess it sounds like, I mean, your position was sort of. Can you talk about, I guess, what your position becomes like, I guess, when you're the one overseeing some of these things and making big decisions about them, right? How did you approach some of that part of your job?
Well, I had the privilege of standing as chairman of Worldwide Studios for 4 years. And at the time with 13 studios, and then just late last year adding Insomniac to the mix, there are 13 very different studios. And they're all have different cultures in them and are seeking to achieve different things inside gaming. And whereas you have some teams that need a little more time, if you will, to get their game done. But they still do. There was a Crackshot team in San Diego cranking out MLB The Show every 10 months, just like clockwork. Because you can't miss opening day in baseball, except for this year, because I think we all missed opening day in baseball this year, because there is no baseball. But so that team is optimized around delivering their creation in that time frame. So working with the teams and looking at their ambitions and their outlook, we wanted to create just a clean runway. I always express that my job as chairman was not to make the creative decisions. My job was to clear the path, get the boulders out of the road, give the team a clean runway to exercise their dream and get their thing off the ground. But I think going into this next generation, not only is that an important role for management in gaming and entertainment around interactive, it's also about really evaluating what can we continue to put into games, at what cost can you continue to create these games, because we're also kind of delimited by one of the weird freaks of nature is that in my experience in 25 years of video gaming, the price of a game has never changed. It's been $59.99 since I started in this business. But the cost of games have gone at 10x to build them. So if you don't have elasticity on the price point, but you have huge volatility on the cost line, the model becomes more difficult. I think this generation is going to see those two imperatives collide.
And they've just delivered so much more value as well, right? They've gone from a few hours of gameplay to sometimes 50 hours, as you said, and that's probably something that has helped gaming do so well right now. Whereas other kinds of entertainment, they're definitely suffering because they were, say, more expensive forms of entertainment, I think.
Well, I think if you look at film and television, I won't bring the cost of making music into this because that's reasonably contained and hasn't changed that much over time. But certainly, if you're going to make the Mandalorian series on TV, or if you're going to make Dunkirk for the screen, or 1917, or some of these huge epic films, the costs associated with that are huge. But at the same time, that kind of linear content, if you will, does have a number of different opportunities to create revenue for it. You start at the box office, and then you go to this windowed case where it ends up in airplanes and hotels, and then it's on HBO, and next thing you know, it's in Netflix, Hulu, it's ABC Movie of the Week. So there's all these different opportunities for that same piece of content to earn licensing or franchising or syndicated revenue, which doesn't exist in gaming. Gaming has the big release, and then if you have DLC, there's some DLC. If you have a season pass, there's a season pass. But that's about it. So we have to look at, are there other models for gaming content to reach the market, which would allow creators another chance to benefit from that transaction.
Yeah. Now, there are all these things that have grown up around, the big $60 games as well now. We have the game subscriptions, we have free-to-play, we have all kinds of cloud gaming ideas, I guess now, or experiments. Mobile games are the biggest part of the industry. How do the narrative games sort of survive in these sort of new contexts? I could definitely see people looking at the the risk reward challenge here and concluding that a small mobile game might be the best financial return you could get in making a game.
I have not played in the the mobile game creation game myself. I've not been in there, but I do see that it seems a very iceberg, kind of business. There's the tip of the iceberg, or the few handful of games in the mobile space which make bank, and then there's the rest of the iceberg underwater, literally, with all the games that don't. So I think that the hit ratio is very tight in the mobile space. But what does that mean for narrative gaming? I think that's the ultimate question right now as we go into the next generation, where it's just going to be, let's just put it this way, it won't be less expensive than the current generation in game development. You get higher specs and greater expectations around that. 4K HDR art and creating worlds doesn't come cheap. All the costs around gaming is all labor costs, right? You don't have to build a factory, you don't have to turn sand into glass or anything like that. It's just your creativity and your ability to bring like-minded people together to accomplish something. But it's all based on the people who are there to create it. And that's all the costs associated with it. So how can we look at that and say, is there another answer? Is there some answer around, instead of spending 5 years to make an 80-hour game, what does 3 years and a 15-hour game look like? And what would be the costs around that? And is that a fully throated experience? Personally, as an older gamer now, that I find myself to be, I would welcome the return to the 12 to 15-hour gameplay. I'd finish more games, first of all, and I think just like a well-edited piece of literature or movie, I think looking at a discipline around that, or containment around it, could get us tighter more compelling content, and it would be something I'd like to see a return to in this business.
Do you think a subscription service actually might help make these kinds of games more possible? Some of the smaller narrative games that we're talking about? You know, in some ways, HBO is sort of really killing it with their subscription service, and nobody's sort of saying that, oh, the quality of HBO's work is declining because it's so limited to a subscription revenue basis.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I haven't explored the models around the HBO experience or the Netflix experience. I do see a lot of new content being keyed off, because I think there is a race to survivor in streaming film services or movie services, and I think everyone's spending to grow in order to see who survives to win. I'm not sure that each investment they make, pays off on a per title basis. But then again, they also have other places. You can buy the Blu-ray of Game of Thrones, and you can pick up other merchandising around that.
Mm-hmm. And what from your
merchandising business licensing model? Yeah.
I'm wondering, from your experience, like what is your job? Like what is the best way that you can inspire your creative people to be their best?
Well, my current job is I'm on sabbatical, so I don't
yeah, right.
I don't have a direct role in any of that at this time.
I was thinking more theoretically, like throughout your career, if you learned something about how to work with creative people, what do you think the job of that person should be, or how they can get the best results out of their creative people?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. I mentioned earlier that management is there to remove obstacles in the path of creativity, but in a more active sense, I think it's important for us to we take a lot of pitches, we listen to a lot of ideas. Nothing is out of place, or nothing is too outrageous or too crazy. You have to really listen to the creators as they bring their ideas to you and want you to believe in their vision. At the same time, you have to push them, you have to challenge them. You need to ask the important questions, not just around cost and manpower and what's the market size is, but kind of poke them through the journey. Why are we doing this game? What itch are we scratching with this? What problem are we solving? Sometimes it's just a creator who has a vision that just needs to get out of their head. And some of the best games in the world have come that way, I hope. One thing I have learned about game development over time is that no great game came from a committee decision. All the great games have one or two, or sometimes three, but never more than that, really, visionaries who have a combined thought around what it is they want to deliver, what story they want to tell, what reaction they want to receive. It's not like the bad, there's bad times, like back in the film industry, I think back in the 80s, where you'd have committees come together and say, let's make a buddy movie, and there'll be the old cop and the younger cop, and the old cop will be 2 days from retirement, and the younger cop's thing, then blah, blah, blah. And you get a bunch of copycat films like that. I think gaming needs to stay true to the vision of the creative team. It's not about the publishing company per se. It's not about management types. It's really who's got a burning story they have to get out of them and express it through gaming, and how can we help them get there?
Mm-hmm. Now, how different is life for you now? I guess you're not at the same company you were at for decades. I remember you seem to enjoy giving talks about the industry, with some kind of a goal or message, I guess. And the DICE Summit talk was one of those examples that I remember very well. And it must be very, very different, being outside and not sort of being responsible for carrying a particular company's message now. Are there some things you're feeling about the game industry now that you can talk about that maybe you couldn't do while you're carrying a message, I guess? Right?
You mean that I have an Xbox in my living room? That I mentioned earlier. Uh, yeah, I think in a whole host of ways, this is a really, really important and interesting time, Dean. Not just for gaming, but for society overall. We've had this virus situation for virtually all of 2020, and it continues to impact countries all over the world. It's changed the way of life. It's changed the way of work, certainly. I can't imagine now, because I left the company at the end of last year. I don't know how they are managing to do all of these things remotely. I mean, Worldwide Studios, when I left, was about 2,600 people. And if everyone's working from home, trying to continue the creation of their games and bring it to conclusion, that's got to be a huge challenge. I mean, with teams that are working on having Scrum stand-ups 3 times a week, and these check-ins, and looking at deliverables, and then being able to update source at studio from your, let's say, less than robust local telecom internet connection. There's got to be a host of challenges around it. I'm heartened to see that the teams have found ways to get through that. Certainly the delivery of The Last of Us 2 has shown that you can finish off a game remotely. But I think it's going to be a challenge for those early ideation phases in game development. How do you come together and knock together the great idea? I'm not sure how effective that is over Zoom, but I know the teams are working around that. I think this is an opportunity, though, as we change our way of life and our way of work, to look at what it is we want to come back to. People use the phrase, when do we get back to normal? As if getting back to normal is getting back to 2019. The world of 2019. That world is gone. That world is now sealed in amber. Everything that was pre-virus is now a historical artifact that we can explore and look at and still take lessons from. But there's no getting back to that. And I think that as we go forward, we have to understand what the implication of extended work from home is like. And I think a lot of people have found that in this environment of working from home, people are beginning to reevaluate their own relationship with work. I think it would be unreasonable to expect that even if a vaccine is found, that people are going to want to go back to work and do the 80, 90-hour week at the office and come home and just try to recover over the weekend and go back into that. The pace of life is slowing down. I think that's no bad thing. If we don't take something positive from this extended period of quarantine, we've really squandered the opportunity. This is, when we come out of this, Dean, I think you and I were talking the other day, the 20th century lasted 20 years longer than it was supposed to. It didn't end in the year 2000 or 2001 to the purists. I think it ended with the virus. And the world that comes out of this is really the 21st century. And as we step into the 21st century, I think we have to re-examine our relationship with work, our relationship with how we get things done. How do we work smarter rather than working longer? I think those all have great implications for every industry, but gaming in particular.
Yeah, it feels like companies really have to think about things like crunch, think about the mental the mental health of their employees in a way that they didn't really have to sort of concern themselves with in the past, I guess. And yeah, that feels like it is.
And I really want to encourage those kind of developments, because I think we get a greater variety
that weren't happening for much of the game industry's history.
A lot of folks from the traditional gaming sectors, like where I came from, some folks were alarmed to see the big players moving in, and some of us looked at it and said, "See, there you go. We've been telling the world this game is going to be a thing, So when you see these big four come moving in, that's definitely a validation of, oh yeah, this is a thing. This is important. It's a $50 billion business in North America. It's a $160 billion business worldwide, and that doesn't even include what's been happening in the last few months because it's kind of been juiced up with everyone being at home on quarantine. So those numbers will be bigger this year probably than they were last year. And it's here to stay, and it's going to impact every aspect of life. And that's why you see Amazon or Google or Facebook or Apple wanting to get in on this, because this is where a lot of contemporary entertainment occurs in homes across the world. I'm happy to see them get in. I think every chorus is strengthened by more voices in the choir. But I also think they have to have a good understanding that being a success in gaming isn't easy. And just because you've got deep pockets and huge ambitions, it's going to take a few swings and misses until you hit something. And I hope that these big players have the patience to see it through, and will also use their platform and power to enable a wider array of creators to come into interactive entertainment and do something fun and important.
Well, I know you've had a sabbatical. Is there something you figured out yourself about what you want to do and where you want to take a big swing, or do some more relaxing, I guess?
Yeah, well, I was with Sony for 32 years. So when I decided to move on and to head into my self-imposed sabbatical to give myself a chance to recharge and refresh and get ready, I didn't know I was also going to be taking a sabbatical into a quarantine. It was a strange extension of my personal plan. So what I'm hoping to do in the future has got a bit of an extension on it now, because we're not doing much of anything anywhere. But I would like to think that there are still new things to discover and develop and engender in that interesting intersection between technology and entertainment. That nexus is growing bigger and stronger. To your point, all these other kinds of gaming experiences. We haven't even talked about esports and what that means into gaming. But as well, you see players like Netflix coming out with things like Bandersnatch, which is an interesting experiment in how you can have interactive linear entertainment. I think we're going to see more in that area continue to grow. And I wouldn't be surprised to see that, particularly as a result of 3-4 months of lockdown, that the audience for virtual reality is probably stronger now. I think people have had time to allow themselves to immerse into that new technology. And I'm hoping with the next generation of hardware coming through, that we'll also see iteration, evolution, and advancement across the VR platforms, which would be an exciting place where everything is new. And it's only limited by the ability of the imaginations of creators to bring something wonderful into VR. So I'm looking at all those sectors. I'm very hopeful that the industry continues to advance across that. And there may be one or two things in there that I can help other people with.
Do you think we're going to get to something like a metaverse, and sooner rather than later? Perhaps because we are sort of sheltered right now.
When you say metaverse, are you talking like Ready Player One kind of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I probably won't live that long, but surely people are just spending more of their time in a technology-enhanced format. You could say all these Zoom calls that we're doing across the world is kind of its own metaverse, with people throwing up their virtual backgrounds and looking like cosplay characters when they get onto their Zoom call.
I hope Zoom isn't I'm hoping we can get to something more immersive than Zoom, though. It's fine for what it is.
Well,
but,
it's fine for what it is, and but it's just the initial stages. I mean, look, I think the first gaming console I ever owned was an Atari 800, which was just the Atari 400 with a better keyboard, I think. And that from that experience in playing Centipede and Space War, and I forget what the driving game was we had on that machine back then. One could never imagine The Last of Us 2. You just couldn't. You couldn't look at a Motorola a mobile phone back in 1999 and imagine an iPhone. You couldn't. You couldn't have drawn that line, but that's where we ended up. So I feel the same sort of optimism around VR and gaming in the overall. There's no way anyone can predict what gaming is going to look like 15 years from now, but I'm sure looking forward to be there to see it.
Mm-hmm. So we're on the verge of a new console generation here, and I wonder what whether you have some observations about that, or maybe even some advice for the people who are working at these companies and getting ready to launch these big things.
Launching a console is a particular dance and maneuver that is unique to the gaming industry and only happens every 5 or 6 or 7 years. It's not easy. Some of the moves you have to make may seem counterintuitive in the moment, but I think the whole industry has shown that every successive generation, the launches are more solid, are more transparent. You can see what it is and see what it does. There are relatively no snafus with the launch of hardware these days. I know I'm probably jinxed something just by saying that. But I think, once again, just remember, in the gaming industry, just remember what you're there for. PlayStation had its own sort of experience across delivering PS1, 2, 3, and 4, and different introductions to the market. And you've heard me tell that story, so I won't tell it again. But it's very important to keep centerpiece in your mind that the gaming console is exactly that. It's a gaming console. It may do other things. It may do more things over time, but it's a gaming console. So keep that in mind. That's the audience that stays with us in gaming. We grow that audience, but they're a gaming audience, and the hardware needs to come out and speak to that constituency to say, we've done our homework, we've worked really hard, we've developed this huge new platform for you to experience your future game time with, and it's going to be awesome. And if gaming companies stray away from that center focus around the gaming community, I think they will lose their way. So that's the only advice, if you will, that I'd give to the next generation of consoles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It definitely feels like the companies that have stayed in this business and have done well have done it with management teams that have gone the distance, right? They're not really always sort of bringing in the manager of the moment from another industry to run this business. And it really seems to be the case that if you're going to do well in this business, you have to do it with people who've done it before.
Yeah, I think that's largely true, though. Every small industry begins by a very tight group of people who are involved with that, and they move from one company to the next, to the next, to the next. I remember one time when I was in the early days of PlayStation, looked around and said, "Did you all graduate from Sega University?" Because that's what it looks like here. But it was true. There was a time when everybody in the industry either worked for Sega at one time or worked for EA at one time. And that's fine, because it's sort of a sui generis business. It doesn't have any other analog out in the world. Certainly from a console perspective, it's really the only business now which has the hardware component vertically integrated into software development. At the same time, I think the industry benefits from bringing new voices in. And that's not just a pay-in to diversity. It really is more a description for how do you grow a business. You don't grow a business by just having the same people in the room making the same game. Here we go. Here's the game plan for Elves in Space 12 as we continue the famous Elves in Space franchise over time. You won't grow the audience just by that. We need new and different things in, and I'm hoping that as the industry grows, and because it's now become so huge and so impactful, that we are getting more people involved. We are getting writers from film and television to get involved with scoring scripts for games. We're getting people from different art backgrounds, people with different stories to tell. So again, things like the independent developer community is so important because that's where a lot of those new voices come in, where people who aren't fluent in the lexicon of gaming can, so to speak, get their feet wet. Learn the ABCs of how to get a game off the ground in a small space, and build it over time into something huge and important.
Yeah, you bring up diversity, and at this time, that's really sort of the second shock we've had beyond the pandemic, right? And the whole Black Lives Matter movement seems like it's an opportunity to bring more change and to have the game industry, learn from that and also lead its own form of the change, I guess. Let's hope that
Certainly.
that's what happens, I guess.
Well, certainly, and that's another vector of what was 20th century and what is 21st century. And I think the uprisings we've seen over the last few weeks, not just in America but around the world, in support of Black Lives Matter, and in support of all of the harm and hurt that's been done out of a position of intolerance over time. We need to break that chain. I think if we don't come out of this pandemic, if we don't come out of this time of upheaval around the world, around the question of our own humanity and who we are as a human race, the only race that counts, right? If we don't make some progress to advance that, then why all the suffering? Why have we done? If we can't, we have to move forward. Again, I don't want to repeat myself, but we can't squander this opportunity to do the right thing, to do a good thing, to make a better world, not just in gaming, but full stop.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think hopefully it will lead to new narratives for us and new opportunities.
A lot more stories to tell.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to say that is a beautiful message to end up with. We all hope that this is worth for something. I mean, this is not just something bad that happened this year, but something that will make us all better in many ways.
Change the world.
And we came back to that better normality, as you were pointing out, Shawn. It's been a fantastic conversation. Unfortunately, we are already running out of time. We would be like speaking with you many more hours. I'm lucky to be friends of you both and to be able to speak with you many more times, but I want to share these conversations also many more times with our audience, and hopefully in a coming Gamelab, eventually next year, we'll be able to continue talking from Barcelona or somewhere else around the world. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being there for us, for sharing your thoughts, for opening your minds and your hearts to the Gamelab audience, and really looking forward to seeing you again in person very soon. It looks like yesterday when we were just having dinner, Shawn, in San Francisco, at your office as well in San Francisco, Dean. So looking forward to come back and visit you or have you back here in Spain with us.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, take care.
Thank you.
Take care and stay safe. Stay safe.
Thank you for bringing us together for this conversation. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dean.
Yeah, thank you, Shawn.